So the Indian Prime Minister led the 9th International Yoga Day celebrations at the United Nations headquarters in New York. This, of course, was the big moment. Remember, the United Nations in 2015 had proclaimed the 21st of June as the International Day of Yoga, and people across the world participated in performing different yoga asanas through the day. The participants from nearly about 135 different nations took part in the event at the United Nations headquarters, and with this, a new Guinness record was created for the highest number of nationalities that took place in a single yoga session anywhere. And ahead of the world record, the Yoga Day session in New York, the Indian Prime Minister addressed the participants and underlined the history of yoga. Now, the Indian Prime Minister also thanked the United Nations and New York officials for helping make the event a huge and a remarkable success.
Let us use the power of yoga not only to be healthy, happy, but also to be kind to ourselves and to each other. Let us use the power of yoga to build bridges of friendship, a peaceful world, and a cleaner, greener, and sustainable future. Let us join hands together to realize the goal of one earth, one family, one future.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also spoke ahead of the yoga session.
I want to recognize Prime Minister Modi for all he has done to promote understanding of yoga and its many benefits. Yoga unites. It unites body and mind, humanity and nature, and millions of people across the globe for whom it is a source of strength, harmony and peace. In a dangerous and divided world, the benefits of this ancient practice are particularly precious.
Now, the participants from at least about 180 nations observed the International Yoga Day celebrations. Now, the Yoga Day program was held at the northern lawn of the United Nations headquarters. The 9th International Day of Yoga event in New York will see participation from the top UN officials, envoys and envoys from across the world. Now, every single year, the theme of International Yoga Day centers around a specific aspect of yoga and its impact on society. And this year, the theme of the International Yoga Day was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which essentially means the world is one family. Now, yoga symbolizes the unity of body and mind. It is viewed as harmony between humanity and nature. And it is viewed as a holistic approach for health and for mental well-being. It's also based on the spiritual well-being of an individual, because that is one of the key objectives of yoga. Now remember, yoga has been an inherent part of Indian culture and ethos for centuries now.
So let's inhale here, bring the elbows.
And also, my colleague Siddhant Sibil has been tracking all the details that are unfolding in New York and has sent us this report. Listen.
It was a star-studded affair at the United Nations headquarters, where the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi led the Yoga Day celebrations. Several UN dignitaries, diplomats and Hollywood actors were present. We know that when it comes to this entire visit, the focus has been on yoga in New York, but essentially now the New York leg of Indian Prime Minister's US visit is over. Now focus shifts to Washington, where the Indian Prime Minister will be holding conversations with the US President Joe Biden, and focus will be on key outcomes from defense to critical technologies and as to how India and US cement their relationship at a time of great geopolitical flux. We know a rise of very aggressive China is something that both New Delhi and Washington are aware of and have been having a conversation on a regular basis. Siddhant Sibil for WION in the United States.
And also to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is happening in New York and also as part of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, we're being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who is joining us live from New York. And we also have retired Colonel David DeRoche, who's joining us live from Washington. He's an associate professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies at the National Defense University. Now, Susan, let me in fact begin with you. This, of course, is the first leg of the Indian Prime Minister's tour to the United States, and what we witnessed today is that the Prime Minister leading the International Yoga Day celebrations. This is something that he's set up for himself. The task of trying to spread yoga across the world. And this is what has been accomplished today.
Absolutely accomplished, and some more, making it to the Guinness World Book of Records for the most nationalities at one place. And that's saying a lot in a place like the United Nations, where it is really a melting pot of different cultures and countries as well, really the center of multilateralism. We saw everyone come together and practice yoga early in the morning, and it was very interesting that Prime Minister Modi decided to make this the first leg of his trip, the first event that he has here in the United States, and then move on to Washington. And he talked about how yoga really represents unity. It brings everyone together, and it's not only for those who are experts, but anyone at any stage can really practice it as well. He really said that it creates a sense of community, and that wasn't by accident. Really, we are in a turbulent world right now with so much turmoil, and the Prime Minister will have a lot of time to talk about the challenges of the global community in Washington with President Biden and others. But he decided to start with a message of unity here at the United Nations, and it was received so well. We had the New York mayor, as you played his soundbite, Cobb, the UN Secretary General, the President of the General Assembly, and so many others, influencers and Hollywood stars and Bollywood stars taking part, really spreading this message of yoga. And it's already prevalent in the United States, and hopefully it'll get a lot more with so much publicity.
Absolutely, indeed. Susan, do continue to stay on with us. Let me also bring in Colonel David DeRoche, who's joining us on this broadcast as well. Now, Colonel, the fact is, over the course of the last few decades, India's relationship with the United States has matured. The last time the Indian Prime Minister was in the United States, he said something very important. He said that we've put behind us the hesitations of the past. And what we are looking at is a realignment of the India-US equation, where the United States is now more willing to share its defense technologies with India. What do you think has changed?
Well, the geopolitical situation has changed. For decades, since the Kennedy administration, Americans have said, these are the two largest democracies. We're national partners. But cooperation has been hindered. On the American side, it's because of, quite frankly, we're afraid of compromise of our equipment because India has still strong defense ties with Russia. And then ideologically, Americans see on the Indian side that this sort of Cold War non-alignment ideology among Indian foreign policy elites really persisted long past its normal lifespan. What's changed is China has killed Indian soldiers within Indian terrain. And I think that India is starting to realize that, the same threats, the country that has seized sovereign and militarized sovereign territory of Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and has, seized Chinese land and murdered Indian soldiers, is a threat. And so I think that basically the realism there has, on the American side, overruled some of our ideological concerns about human rights and things like that.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, Colonel, people who are looking at this equation within India, what they would obviously say is that over the course of the last several decades, the reason why India was more willing to purchase defense hardware from the Russians and the erstwhile Soviets, because the Soviets were more willing to do transfer of technology. But with the new realities that are emerging, and also with the threat that China poses, and also the fact that the United States and China do not seem to be getting along really well, do you think the United States wants India in its camp? Is that what the United States is now trying to do, but deepening the defense cooperation between Washington and New Delhi?
Yeah, I think we are. I think that it's very frustrating for long-term analysts to see two systems that have the same geopolitical and really at their core ideological convictions are natural partners, and the partnership has been inhibited. But it is very true. The United States is very concerned about whether technology will be compromised if it's transferred, and we're also concerned that technology might be used in ways we don't want it to be used.
Right.
And that's a irritating factor with a lot of countries, not just with India.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Colonel DeRoche, and also to my colleague Susan Tehrani for joining us on this broadcast there.